The best doctors in New York found nothing wrong. No disease, no virus, no physical explanation. They called it selective mutism, childhood depression. He called it silence. Until a woman, who didn't come with diplomas or magic formulas, came with something no one in that house had offered: souvenirs. And it was the sound of a simple sandwich on the grill, the smell of melted cheese and warm bread, that made the impossible happen.
Liam Croft's apartment was spotless, silent, and cold, like a photograph no one else looks at. Every polished piece of furniture reflected not only the light from the windows, but also the lifelessness that hung in the air. Noah, his 6-year-old son, sat before his untouched bowl of cereal, his eyes lost in space. Since the divorce and the move to New York, he hadn't uttered more than a dozen words. Liam watched helplessly as the distance between them grew like an invisible wall. In the early days, Liam tried to talk, play, and insist. Then he tried to ignore it, believing that time would heal the boy. But time only solidified the silence. The pediatrician called it adaptive trauma. Liam called it failure. He had become a man who knew how to handle numbers, but not feelings. And seeing his own son refuse even the most basic food was a kind of pain no spreadsheet could solve. The mornings were always the same. Noah in the corner, his toys scattered, the sound of the news filling the void. Liam would leave early for work, return late, and the cycle would begin again. He tried hiring therapists, babysitters, English tutors. They all gave up. The boy wouldn't respond, wouldn't eat, wouldn't cry. It was as if he had hidden inside himself, in a place where no one else could reach him. At night, Liam would sit on the edge of his son's bed, watching the thin body beneath the sheets. The air in the room smelled of medicine and despair. He murmured promises the boy never heard. "I'll figure it out, Noah. I swear I will." But deep down, he knew it was he who needed saving, and that no amount of professional success could make up for the empty look of a son who had given up on the world. Noah dreamed of the sound of voices he couldn't understand. Memories of his mother, his old bedroom, his London backyard came and went like distant waves. Sometimes he thought that if he stayed quiet enough, his father would forget him, and he could finally stop missing home. One morning, Liam got a call from school. Noah hadn't eaten in 2 days. The principal suggested seeking specialized support, but Liam just sighed. He tried to schedule another appointment, but the doctors kept saying the same thing. "He needs affection, Mr. Croft." Affection, a word that sounded like an extinct language in his life. At night, he looked in the bathroom mirror and barely recognized himself. The expensive suit, the tired face, the dull eyes. A man surrounded by conquests and completely unable to feed his own son. "I don't know what to do," he murmured, and for the first time in years, he felt like crying. Meanwhile, Noah watched from the half-open door. His father seemed small, different, human, but the pain was too great to cross the room. So the boy returned to bed, hugged his pillow, and silently let his empty stomach speak for him.
That night was the longest of Liam's life. When morning came, he knew something had to change, and fate, silently, was already making room for someone who would change everything. What if I told you that sometimes a child's silence hides more than words can explain? This story will prove to you that even the coldest heart can learn to love again. Before continuing, subscribe here to the channel, because every week I bring you stories that remind us of a simple truth. Love still exists, and it can change everything. The ad said, "Looking for a discreet, patient, and trustworthy housekeeper. Experience with children is a plus." Eleanor Byrne read it and smiled. She was 52 years old. With an Irish accent she tried to disguise, and hands marked by time. She had left Dublin a decade ago, seeking work and peace. Her previous job had ended badly, but she believed that sometimes life gave second chances, even in the coldest of homes. When she arrived at Liam's apartment, she noticed the silence before she even knocked. Everything was too tidy, too still. Liam opened the door, formal, impeccable, with a look that mixed haste with exhaustion. "Mrs. Byrne?" he asked. She nodded, and for a moment she sensed the fear hidden behind her professionalism, the fear of failing again. Eleanor was introduced to Noah. The boy didn't even look up. He was sitting on the carpet, pushing a stroller half-heartedly. "He doesn't talk much," Liam warned, as if describing a patient, not a child. "It's okay," she replied. "Some wounds don't need words." Liam looked at her, unsure of what to say. For the first few days, Eleanor tried to keep her distance. She cooked, cleaned, observed. He noticed the house smelled of disinfectant and loneliness. Every meal ended with the same sound, the silverware clattering against Noah's untouched plate. No flavor seemed to exist there. Until one cold afternoon, she had an old memory, the smell of toasted bread and melted cheese her grandmother made on winter mornings. The next morning, he decided to take a chance. He turned on the grill, buttered the bread, and waited for the sizzle to fill the kitchen. The aroma wafted through the air, wafting down the hallway and into Noah's room. The boy appeared in the doorway, curious, barefoot, his eyes half closed. Eleanor pretended not to notice and continued flipping her sandwich. The sound was comforting, almost maternal. Liam, leaving the makeshift office, took in the scene. The motionless boy, the smell of real food, the housekeeper intent on the iron. For a second, something shifted in the atmosphere of the house. The air seemed less heavy. He didn't know it, but that small gesture was about to open a breach in the wall separating him from his own son. The aroma of toasting bread filled the kitchen, mingling with the gentle heat rising from the griddle. Eleanor stirred the melted cheese carefully, as if handling something sacred. It was more than a snack. It was a memory. A memory of mornings on her grandmother's farm, of children's laughter, of the wind cutting through the green fields of Ireland. Each movement brought to mind a time when love was simple and silence was light.
Noah, in the doorway, watched everything. The sound of sizzling bread, the scent of browning butter, awakened something in him he couldn't even name. Instinctively, he took a step forward. Eleanor feigned surprise at the sight of him. "Want to help?" he asked calmly. The boy hesitated, but then nodded shyly. It was the first voluntary gesture she'd seen from him. Liam, standing in the hallway, watched the scene without daring to intervene. His heart, accustomed to the rigidity of negotiations and reports, beat erratically. Something was happening here, something he didn't understand, but which, for the first time in a long time, felt right. The silence, previously heavy, now felt almost alive. Eleanor placed the sandwich on a plate and cut it into perfect triangles. Steam rose, bringing with it the scent of childhood. "In Ireland, my grandmother used to say that food made with the heart heals even the cold of the soul," she remarked. Noah remained silent, but his eyes shone with a new curiosity. The boy took the plate hesitantly. He brought it to his face, smelled the bread, and slowly took a bite. The cheese stretched softly, and Eleanor held her breath. Liam felt a lump in his throat. The sound of the first chew seemed to echo through the house, breaking days of absence. The boy looked at her, and for the first time he smiled, small, shy, but genuine. Eleanor almost cried, but held it back. "Is it okay?" she asked, and Noah nodded. Liam leaned against the wall, trying to hide his emotion. He felt ashamed to realize that a mere woman had achieved what he, with all his rationality, had never achieved. After Noah finished his sandwich, Eleanor covered him with a blanket on the couch and turned on some soft music. The boy fell asleep smiling, something he hadn't done since London. Liam remained there, looking at his son and then back at her, as if trying to decipher the invisible secret she held in her hands. "It was just a sandwich," she said humbly. "No," Liam replied hoarsely. "It was something much bigger." The look between them carried the weight of losses that had yet to be spoken. Each, in their own way, knew what it was like to try to feed an empty heart. That night, the house breathed again. Liam slept in the living room, unconsciously listening to the soft sound of his son's breathing. And for the first time in a long time, he dreamed of something resembling peace. The following days brought small changes that seemed like miracles. Noah began eating small portions, soup, bread, fruit. Eleanor never forced him. She simply offered, patiently and lovingly. The boy, like a shy flower, blossomed silently. Liam watched, torn between gratitude and guilt.
One morning, Eleanor found him sitting at the table early, waiting for coffee. She smiled. "Good morning, little one," Noah responded with a wave. It was simple, but enough to brighten the day. The kitchen, once a place of obligation, had become the center of the house. The sound of silverware, the aroma of butter and bread, the human warmth, everything there seemed to mend something broken. Liam began participating more at mealtimes. At first, I just watched, uncomfortable, unsure of what to say. But little by little, he began to laugh at Eleanor's shy comments and his son's curious looks. He realized that laughter, so forgotten, was still possible, and that perhaps love didn't have to be perfect, just present. One afternoon, Eleanor told Noah stories about her childhood. He spoke of the Irish fields, the dew-covered hills, the smell of wet earth. The boy listened, fascinated, as if traveling along. Liam, from the office, pretended to work, but in reality, he listened, absorbing the sweet, nostalgic tone that filled the house. It was at that moment that he realized something. Eleanor wasn't just healing her son, she was healing the home. The walls seemed less cold, the light warmer, and his heart, so long locked away, began to open, even against his will. One night, while Noah slept, Liam thanked her. "I don't know how you did it," he said. Eleanor just smiled. "I didn't do anything, Mr. Croft. I just cooked it from memory." That phrase echoed in his head like a silent prayer. Time passed slowly. Noah began to laugh more, eat better, and sleep soundly. Liam still struggled with feelings of failure, but seeing his son smile, he understood that perhaps there was redemption, even in the hands of someone else. Eleanor, for her part, saw in the boy a reflection of the son she had lost. Sometimes at night, he would look into Noah's room and cry softly, not out of pain, but out of gratitude. It was as if fate had brought her here to rediscover the part of herself she had lost. Noah's first smile had become the invisible turning point in all their lives. It wasn't a miracle, but a reminder that even the most broken hearts know the taste of love when it's served warm again. The days became less silent. Noah ate, laughed, asked for stories, and even sang softly. For Liam, however, the relief was accompanied by something uncomfortable, the feeling that he hadn't been responsible for this change. He sat at the table and watched his son interact with Eleanor, exchanging glances and laughter that he himself couldn't provoke. His heart ached, but pride kept him silent. One morning, when Liam saw Noah running to Eleanor to show him a drawing, he tried to intervene. "Show it to me first, son." The boy hesitated, looked at him and then at her, before running back to the housekeeper. Liam froze.
a simple gesture, but it pierced him like a blade. He realized with shame that he had become a stranger in his own home.
That night, he tried to make amends. He returned from work with bags full of toys, new clothes, and imported sweets. Eleanor looked at the scene kindly, but sensed the desperation behind the generosity. "He doesn't need more things, Mr. Croft," she said calmly. "He needs time." Liam pretended not to hear, but the sentence echoed within him for days. Pride, however, was an old armor. He began to avoid the moments when Eleanor and Noah were together, pretending to be busy with reports and meetings. But all it took was hearing his son's laughter coming from the kitchen for something inside him to tremble. It was a sound he thought he'd never hear again, and one he now didn't know how to be a part of. One afternoon, as Eleanor was preparing a stew, Liam approached and asked softly, "How do you make him listen to you? I talk and he's silent." She answered without hesitation, "I don't talk to him to listen, Mr. Croft. I talk to him to feel." The silence that followed was almost painful. For the first time, Liam found himself without answers and realized that perhaps love wasn't something to be earned, but relearned. Over the next few days, Eleanor began inviting Liam to join her meals. He reluctantly accepted, still stuck in his role as observer. One dinner in particular stuck with him. Noah asked his father to cut the bread into triangles, like Ellie does. Liam smiled slightly, cutting awkwardly, and the boy laughed. A small laugh, but enough to warm the air between them. Eleanor noticed his look, a mix of gratitude and vulnerability. She understood that behind the cold man was someone lost, and she silently decided to help him too, even if he never asked. That night, Liam lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The memory of his ex-wife haunted him. The end of their marriage, the fights, his pride, it all came back like echoes of something he hadn't yet had the courage to face. He thought of Noah, thought of Eleanor, and realized that perhaps what he feared most was tenderness. The next day, before leaving for work, he stopped in the kitchen and thanked her. "For everything," he said simply. Eleanor nodded, speechless. There was a silent understanding between them, the kind that arises between two souls bearing similar losses. Little by little, without realizing it, Liam began to let his rigidity give way to vulnerability, and, unbeknownst to him, this would be the first step toward facing his own ghosts. That week, rain fell lightly over Manhattan. Eleanor watched the drops run down the window as she prepared breakfast. The sound of the water hitting the glass transported her to another time. The green fields of Ireland, the smoke billowing from chimneys, the smell of fresh bread and warm milk. For a moment, her heart ached with longing. Noah entered the kitchen, dragging a sketchbook. "You look sad, Ellie," he said softly. She bent down, touched his face, and smiled. "It's just longing, my love, longing for a place where the sky seemed closer." He opened the sketchbook and asked, "Draw for me." And so, with simple strokes, a portrait of Ireland was born, with hills, cows, and a little red-roofed house.
Liam, seeing the drawing later, was impressed. "Did you make this?" he asked Eleanor. She nodded. "I just showed him what he asked to see." He remained silent, touching the paper carefully. It was beautiful, simple, yet soulful, exactly what his own life was missing. Over the next few days, Eleanor began sharing little stories with Noah. She spoke of her grandmother, baking bread in the stone oven, of the days when the wind blew so hard it seemed to sing. Noah listened enchanted, and each word seemed to nourish him more than any meal. Liam, from the office, listened from afar and felt something inside him soften. One night, while tidying the kitchen, Eleanor found an old portrait tucked away among her belongings, a yellowed photo of a small boy in a field, with the same smile as Noah. She stared at it for long minutes, her chest tight. The past returned, insistent, like a shadow that never dissipates. Noah noticed her teary eyes. "Is he your son?" he asked innocently. Eleanor swallowed. "Yes," she replied softly. The boy approached and took her hand, a pure, silent gesture. "Does he live back in Ireland?" She smiled, with the pain of someone who carries love and absence in the same place. "Yes, dear. He lives there and here." Later, alone, she cried, not out of sadness, but out of gratitude. She felt that somehow life had given her a new chance to care, and perhaps to be cared for as well. Liam noticed her eyes were red, but he didn't ask. He simply poured coffee and stood silently beside her. It was a small gesture, but one filled with respect. Two different worlds united by a boy and the memories of everything they'd lost. That night, Eleanor looked up at the sky and whispered a prayer in Gaelic. She gave thanks for the boy, for the man she was trying to change, and for the fate that had mysteriously brought her to this home. And for the first time in many years, she fell asleep peacefully. As the weeks passed, the house began to breathe a different air. Mornings no longer felt empty. There was the smell of bread, the sound of laughter, and small, shy conversations between father and son. Noah was a child again, and every smile of his felt like a gift to Eleanor. Liam, though still clumsy, began to participate more spontaneously. Sometimes he simply observed, but his gaze said what words still couldn't. One afternoon, Eleanor decided to have an impromptu picnic in the living room. She spread a plaid tablecloth on the floor, cut up fruit, made sandwiches, and called the two over. Noah ran over excitedly, and Liam, reluctantly, finally gave in. As they sat together, something simple happened. Noah rested his head on his father's shoulder. For a moment, time stood still. Eleanor watched discreetly, her heart aching and happy at the same time. She knew this was the kind of gesture that couldn't be taught. It happened when love found its place. Liam swallowed and wordlessly put his arm around his son. It was a small hug, but full of reconciliation.
Over the next few days, Noah began drawing more. He filled pages with family pictures. A man, a boy, and a woman with her hair tied up. When Eleanor saw it, she asked, "Who's she?" He replied, smiling, "It's you. You're the one who makes the melted cheese." Her heart melted with it. Liam kept one of the drawings in his office drawer. Every time I looked at it, I felt a kind of peace I hadn't known in years. But along with it came fear. Fear of losing everything again. Fear of feeling too much. It was as if happiness were a slippery slope, ready to fall apart at any mistake. One weekend, Eleanor decided to teach Noah how to make grilled cheese. He laughed as he buttered his bread, his hands clumsy and his face intent. "Perfect," she said, smiling. Liam watched from the doorway, enchanted by the simplicity of the scene. For the first time, the apartment felt like home. Over dinner, Eleanor told stories of Ireland and old country feasts. Noah listened, fascinated, and asked her to tell him more about the stars there. "They're the same as here," she replied, "but sometimes we need to look differently to see." As night fell, Liam thanked her once more. "You changed everything in here." She replied, "No, Mr. Croft, I only remembered what was important." And in that instant, something invisible between them began to grow, something neither of them dared to name. The bond between the three had become the thread that stitched together their losses and hopes. The boy, unknowingly, was mending two broken hearts, one a father's, the other a mother he never stopped being. But, like every healing, there was a wound ready to open. It was night when Eleanor found an old picture of her son tucked away among her clothes. The yellowed photo showed a blond boy in a field of flowers, the wind tousling his hair. The name written on the back, Noah Byrne, 1998. The same name as the boy now sleeping in the next room. Fate, she thought, has a cruel and divine sense of irony. She sat on the bed and held the photo to her chest. The memory came like a tide. The day of the accident, the tears, the silence that had accompanied her for years. She had left Ireland to escape the pain, but discovered that pain travels with her, within the chest. The new Noah had lit a light where there had been only shadow, and now she feared extinguishing that light with the truth she had hidden. Liam, passing through the hallway, heard a sob coming from her room. He knocked hesitantly. "Is everything okay, Mrs. Byrne?" She hurriedly wiped away her tears. "Just old memories, Mr. Croft." He wanted to ask more, but something in her tone made him back away. There was a pain there he recognized. The pain of someone who has lost something that time cannot restore.
The next morning, Eleanor seemed quieter. Noah noticed and asked, "Did you dream about sad things?" She smiled. "Sometimes dreams just remind us that we still feel." The boy hugged her spontaneously. Liam watched from afar, sensing something greater between those two souls. That hug stayed with Eleanor all day. The boy, so small, had returned the gesture she'd waited years to receive again. For the first time, she thought that perhaps love hadn't been ripped from her, just transformed. That night, she went to the kitchen and began preparing dinner. Her hands trembled, but the gesture was mechanical. Every stroke of the knife, every smell was a memory. Liam entered slowly. "You look different," he said. "Just tired," he replied. But her eyes said something else. He noticed the yellowed portrait on the counter. He approached, read the name, and froze. "Was your son also named Noah?" Silence was answer enough. Eleanor nodded, her voice breaking. "He's been gone a long time. I never told you because I didn't want you to feel sorry." Liam stood still, feeling the weight of this revelation. "It's not pity," he said finally. "It's respect." Eleanor lowered her gaze, but there was a gleam in her eyes, not of sadness, but of relief. The secret was finally no longer hers alone. Liam looked at her differently in that moment, not as an employee, but as someone who, like him, knew what it was like to lose the one she loved most. The kitchen fell silent. The sound of the clock ticking and the smell of toasting bread filled the air. And somehow, in that pause between memories and confessions, something began to change forever. The revelation hung in the air like a suppressed thunderclap. Liam remained motionless, his eyes fixed on the photo of little Noah Byrne. Eleanor gasped for air between the words she couldn't explain. "It was an accident. He was 7, a high fever, one night, and suddenly the world ended." Her voice trembled, and each sentence seemed to rip a piece of her soul away. Liam sat at the table, unsure of what to say. The silence between them was thick, almost solid. "You should have told me," he murmured. "I thought you should know who was taking care of my son." Eleanor clutched the crucifix around her neck and replied, "And I thought you would understand that I didn't come here out of pity. I came because I needed to take care of someone again." The pain turned into misunderstanding. Liam's pride, always lurking, spoke louder. "Perhaps you've got things mixed up, Mrs. Byrne. My son is not a replacement for yours." Eleanor recoiled, as if struck. "I never treated him as a replacement," she replied, her voice firm but wounded. "He reminded me that love still exists, even after loss. And perhaps you don't know what that is."
The tension exploded. Liam stood, his face racked with guilt and misplaced anger. "Leave. Take some time off if you want. I don't know what to think anymore." The tears Eleanor had been holding back finally fell. "Don't worry, Mr. Croft," she said with dignity. "I'll be there early tomorrow. But know this, the boy will miss more than just my sandwiches." That night, Eleanor packed in silence. Noah slept, oblivious to the storm. Before bed, she left a simple note on the kitchen table. "Thank you for letting me love again, even if only for a little while. Take care of him and yourself." When day broke, Noah went downstairs and couldn't find her. Her empty chair in the kitchen felt colder than ever. "Where's Ellie?" he asked. Liam couldn't answer. The boy waited all day, sitting near the door, his eyes watering. That afternoon the phone rang. It was the school, informing them that Noah hadn't eaten anything during recess. The weight of déjà vu crushed Liam. Everything they had achieved was crumbling, and it was his fault. That night, Liam found the note on the table. The words trembled in the simple handwriting, but they carried tenderness. He read it over and over until the letters began to blur together through his tears. For the first time, he admitted out loud, "I kicked her out because I was afraid to feel." Meanwhile, Eleanor, in a small rooming house in Queens, stared out the window. The city seemed vast, indifferent. She felt alone again, but a part of her knew she couldn't truly leave while that boy was still waiting for her. Fate, however, still had one last gesture of reconciliation in store, and it would be Noah, once again, who would show the way back. Without Eleanor, the house seemed to have lost its breath. The smell of hot food disappeared, replaced by that of disinfectant and cold coffee. Noah stopped laughing, stopped eating, stopped everything. He returned to his previous state, the distant gaze, the closed mouth, the absolute silence. Liam tried to mask his despair with routines, but the emptiness was evident. The nights grew long. Liam sat beside his son, begging, "Please, Noah, just eat a little." But the boy just shook his head, the same lost look he'd had when his mother had left. Liam understood now what Eleanor meant. The boy wasn't hungry for food, but for human warmth.
He tried to cook. He tried to recreate the grilled cheese, remembering Eleanor's movements. The bread burned, the cheese hardened. Noah looked sadly and walked away. Liam tasted the bitter taste of helplessness. What Eleanor did wasn't just cooking, it was loving through gestures. The days that followed were a painful repetition. The apartment, once full of sounds and smells, returned to its original silence. Liam paced the rooms like a ghost. Noah slept little, crying in secret. One night, the man found his son hugging a napkin with the letters E. Byrne scrawled on it. His heart broke. The next morning, when Liam looked in the mirror, he barely recognized himself. There were dark circles under his eyes, stubble, and a lost look in his eyes. He picked up Eleanor's note again and carefully folded it in his pocket. He knew what he had to do, not for himself, but for the boy who still believed the woman would return. He left the house in a light drizzle. Every step down the street was accompanied by memories. Noah's first smile, the sound of the iron, Eleanor's light laugh. He hailed a taxi and asked for the address she'd left on her work application. Queens seemed like another world, more human, more real. When he arrived, he hesitated at the door of the simple building. He considered turning back, but Noah's voice echoed in his mind. She's the one who makes the melted cheese. He knocked on the door. Nothing. He tried again. This time, he heard slow footsteps and the familiar voice. "Mr. Croft?" Eleanor stood there, with the same tired but serene look. He said nothing for a few seconds. He just took a deep breath and murmured, "I messed up." The sentence he feared most, but also the most liberating.
She looked at him in surprise. Why? Liam lowered his eyes. Because I mistook love for control. Because I thought showing emotion was weakness. But the truth is, without you, we're both starving again. The silence that followed was gentle, almost tender. Eleanor smiled slightly, her tears held back. Then come home, Mr. Croft. Not as a master, but as a father. And in that instant, the cold that had taken hold of Liam finally began to melt. The days after Eleanor's departure dragged on like a punishment. Liam tried to maintain his routine, but the house felt suffocating. Noah refused every meal, every attempt at conversation. The boy barely slept, and his sunken eyes betrayed the return of an emptiness Liam had sworn never to allow again. The sound of silence was deafening. One night, seeing his son lying pale on the couch, hugging a napkin labeled Ellie, Liam broke down. He sat beside him and cried for the first time in years. He cried for his ex-wife, for his own arrogance, for all the days he'd pretended to know how to love. I failed you, son, but I can still try to make it right.
The next morning, he took Noah to the doctor. The diagnosis was simple and cruel. The boy was emotionally withdrawn again. He needs stability, affection. You know what to do, but maybe you don't want to admit it. Liam listened silently. For the first time, he understood that the cure wouldn't come from medication, but from repentance and courage. At home, he tried cooking again. The bread burned again, and he laughed, a bitter, almost desperate laugh. "I can't do this without you, Eleanor," he murmured. The smell of burnt butter filled the kitchen, mingling with longing. Noah appeared in the doorway, his eyes sad. "Dad, will Ellie come back?" Liam knelt before him. "I'll bring her back, I promise." That night, he couldn't sleep. He kept turning over memories, Noah's first smile, Eleanor's tender gaze, the phrase that haunted him. He needs time. Now he was the one who needed time to undo his own mistakes, and he knew that every minute away from her was another step toward guilt. The next morning, he packed his suitcase with the bare necessities. He asked his neighbor to watch Noah and took the subway to Queens. The city, outside, seemed indifferent to the drama he was experiencing. Faces hurried past, and Liam wondered how many people on that train carried regrets like his. The cold cut through the air as he got off at the station. He followed the streets until he reached the boarding house where she lived. The building was simple, but with flowers in the window, a touch of life amidst the concrete. He knocked on the door of apartment 3B. No answer. He tried again. Nothing. For a moment, fear consumed him. What if she had already left? As he waited, he remembered the first time he'd seen her, the shy smile, the soft accent, the calm that contrasted with her chaos. He remembered the sound of the grill and the scent of toasted cheese. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. "Please be here." The door opened slowly. Eleanor appeared, surprised, her hair tied back and a look of confusion. "Mr. Croft?" Liam took a deep breath. "I needed to see you." Eleanor was slow to react. "What are you doing here?" she asked, gripping the doorframe. "I came to apologize for judging you, for letting fear get the better of you, and for forgetting that love isn't about control, it's about presence." She fell silent, unsure if she believed him. "And Noah?" he finally asked. "How was he?" Liam lowered his eyes. "Worse. He's back to shutting himself down, not eating,
The doctor said that only you could reach him." His voice cracked. "I don't want him to come back for me, but he needs you, and so do I."
Eleanor took a deep breath. Part of her wanted to run to the boy. Another part feared reopening the wounds that had barely healed. "I don't know if I can go through this again, Mr. Croft," she said, almost in a whisper. "Watching someone waste away, feeling like they're not enough." Liam stepped forward. "You were always enough. It was I who wasn't." The sincerity in his gaze disarmed her. Liam seemed different, more human, more vulnerable. "I don't want a governess," he continued. "I want someone who can teach me to love the way you love, and if that means starting over from scratch, I'll take it." Eleanor looked away, fighting back tears. Finally, she nodded. "Okay, I'll come back, but for the boy, because what's between us needs time, Mr. Croft." He smiled with relief. "Then come home. We'll figure out the rest together." The ride back was silent, but filled with meaning. When they arrived, Noah was at the window, hugging the napkin with her name on it. Seeing her, he ran and jumped into her arms. "I knew you'd come back," he shouted, his face lighting up. Eleanor hugged him tightly, tears mixing with laughter. Liam watched the scene, a lump in his throat. This reunion was more than forgiveness, it was salvation. "He hasn't eaten anything today," he confessed. Eleanor smiled and went to the kitchen. "Then let's start over." He lit the griddle, spread the butter, and waited for the familiar sound to fill the air. Noah watched, mesmerized. Liam sat at the table, and the smell of golden bread brought back the life that had vanished. The boy ate the first piece and laughed. "Just like that, Ellie." Liam smiled, his eyes brimming with tears. "Exactly the same," he repeated. The house, once again, was filled with sound, smell, and love. And that night, as Noah fell asleep, Liam looked at Eleanor and said something he never had the courage to say. "You didn't just save my son, you saved me, too." Eleanor replied with a serene smile. "Then we're even, Mr. Croft, because you two saved me first."
The next morning arrived calmly, almost timidly, as if the sun didn't want to break the spell of the previous night. The house was alive again, the sound of pots and pans, Noah's laughter, the aroma of toasting bread. Liam watched from afar, as if contemplating a miracle in motion. For the first time, fear gave way to gratitude. Noah insisted on helping Eleanor cook. "I'll hold the bread," he'd say, and she'd laugh. Liam, leaning against the doorframe, felt a peace he hadn't known in a long time. It was as if the apartment, once a mausoleum of memories and regrets, had begun to breathe again. But there was something he still needed to say, something that had been eating at him since the day he'd sent her away. When Noah went off to play in his room, Liam approached the kitchen. "Eleanor." She turned, surprised. "Yes, Mr. Croft?" He took a deep breath. "Don't call me that anymore. I don't want to be anyone's boss. I want to be just Liam." She smiled gently. "Okay, Liam." The name in her voice sounded like redemption. He hesitated for a moment, then continued. "I spent my whole life running away from feelings. When I lost my wife, I thought love was a weakness. And then you came along, with your accent, your stories, and your sandwiches, and showed me otherwise." Eleanor looked down, overcome with emotion. "I was just trying to care." "And he did," he replied firmly. "But he also taught me to feel, to make mistakes, to forgive. I don't know what this is between us, but I know it's real." The silence that followed was filled with tenderness. Eleanor took a deep breath. "Liam, I'm scared." "Of what?" of losing again. He approached slowly. Then don't miss it. Stay. She wanted to answer, but the tears spoke first. Liam took her hands, and the touch was simple, pure, the kind of gesture that carries more truth than any promise. You don't have to be strong all the time. Neither do I. Maybe we can learn together. Noah appeared in the doorway, watching the scene. Dad, is Ellie crying? Liam smiled. With joy, son. Eleanor knelt down, hugging the boy tightly. I'm crying because I'm happy to be home. And there, in the embrace of the three, there was no more past, no more fear, only the certainty that somehow fate had stitched them together. Later, after Noah fell asleep, Liam and Eleanor sat on the porch. The city shimmered in the distance, but inside the apartment, the world seemed to fit together. You know, she said, I thought I'd lost my home. Now I realize it's just a changed address. Liam took her hand and smiled. Welcome back home. On Sunday morning, the sky was clear, and the air smelled of the promise of a new beginning. Noah woke up excited and ran to their room. Today's special sandwich day, he announced. Eleanor feigned surprise. Oh, really? And who's going to cook? The boy raised his hand excitedly. Me, Daddy, and you, together. Liam laughed. Full team. The kitchen transformed into a small stage of joy. Eleanor turned on the grill, Liam gathered the ingredients, and Noah coordinated everything like a little chef. The sound of melting butter, the sizzling of bread, the smell of melting cheese, everything mingled with laughter. Eleanor looked at Liam, and for an instant saw her old Noah there too. Not the boy she'd lost, but the love that remained. Her heart filled with a peace that had seemed impossible for years. When the sandwiches were ready, Noah insisted they be cut into triangles as always. Eleanor complied, smiling. They sat at the table, and Liam made a simple toast. To the beginnings life gives us, even when we think it's all over. Eleanor added, and to the memories that teach us to love again. Noah took a bite of the first piece, closed his eyes, and laughed. It's just like the first time. Liam looked at Eleanor and replied, No, son, it's better, because now there's love between the three of them. Breakfast lasted longer than expected. No one wanted to get up. Liam watched them both, his heart light. He thought of how fate can be cruel and generous. He had lost a home, but gained another, made of memories, courage, and new beginnings. Eleanor, for her part, knew that nothing would replace the son she had lost. But looking at Noah, she realized that love doesn't disappear, it just changes form. The boy, with his butter-stained hands and bright smile, was proof of that. When they finished, Liam cleared the dishes, but Eleanor stopped him. Leave it, I'll do it. He smiled. Today, no one works. Today, we just live. The afternoon arrived slowly. Noah played with drawings, and Eleanor and Liam stood at the window, watching the sun sink between the buildings. Liam, she said, breaking the silence. Yes? Thank you for letting me stay. He replied softly, It wasn't me who left you. It was fate that brought you back. The following months passed peacefully, as if time, tired of so much pain, had finally decided to be kind. Noah grew strong, curious, and talkative. The shadows had dissipated from the house, replaced by laughter and the sounds of life going on. Eleanor took care of the home. Liam worked less and smiled more. The apartment, once cold and impersonal, now had a soul. One night, while leafing through a photo album, Noah pointed to an old drawing, Eleanor's Irish Hills. Could we go there sometime? He asked. Liam and Eleanor exchanged glances. The idea seemed far-fetched, yet perfect. Maybe it's time to visit the place that taught me how to feel homesick, she replied with a smile. 2 weeks later, they were on the plane. Noah, excited, pressed his face against the window, mesmerized by the clouds.
Eleanor watched silently, her heart heavy and serene at the same time. Liam took her hand. "Ready?" She nodded, ready to go back, but this time without running away.
When they arrived, the Irish wind enveloped them like an ancient embrace. The green hills stretched to the horizon, dotted with flowers and memories. Eleanor led them to the small cemetery in the village where she had grown up. There, beneath a tree, stood a simple headstone bearing the name Noah Byrne. She knelt, running her fingers over the worn letters. "Hi, my love," she whispered. Liam and little Noah stood silently behind her. "This is the Noah you sent me. He has your name, your laugh, and the most beautiful heart in the world. And this is the man who taught me that life can still be good." The wind blew hard, scattering flowers across the ground. Eleanor closed her eyes and let the tears fall, not of pain, but of gratitude. For the first time in decades, the memory of her son didn't hurt. It was a light presence, as if he were smiling along with her, content. Liam knelt beside her, touching her shoulder. "He would be proud of you," he said sincerely, "and so am I." She took his hand, and the silence that followed was the most beautiful they had ever shared, full of love, of forgiveness, of new beginnings. Later, they walked together through the fields. Noah ran ahead, laughing, trying to catch the wind. Eleanor watched him, her eyes full of life. "You know, sometimes I think God stitches our wounds together with people. You two were the thread that brought me back." Liam smiled, moved. "And you were the home I didn't know I was looking for." At dusk, they sat on the hill, watching the sun sink behind the mountains. Noah fell asleep between them, his face peaceful. Eleanor rested her head on Liam's shoulder. "It seems the world has finally found silence, but a good silence," she said. "It's the sound of peace," he replied. Before they returned, Eleanor picked up a small piece of stone from the hill and tucked it into her pocket. "So I'll never forget where I came from or where I returned to," she explained. Liam smiled. "Now this place is mine too." She looked at him tenderly. "And Noah's. He belongs to both worlds now, the one that remained and the one that began." On the plain back, Noah slept against the window, and Eleanor, her head resting on Liam's shoulder, whispered, "Do you think love can start again, even after all this time?" He replied, "Love doesn't start. It comes back. We just have to be ready to receive it." As the plane flew over the Atlantic, the orange-tinted sky reflected in their eyes. Eleanor closed her eyes, and for a moment she felt like all the pieces of her were in the right place. Home was no longer a house, nor a country. It was that moment between the man and the boy fate had given her.
And so, as the world went on outside, three hearts, marked by loss, guilt, and hope, beat in unison. Family, after all, was this: what's left when love decides to stay. If this story touched your heart, remember, there is always a way to start over, even after the pain. Sign up now and come experience more stories like this, stories that heal, move, and make you believe again in the power of love.